Hello once again. We continue our Nullitaire playthrough of Liberty or Death. So once again, Nullitaire here means 0 players, so we're playing all the bots against each other. We are in the middle of a year here. We didn't quite get to a winter quarters round last turn. Some brilliant stroke cards were played, and so it took some time to work out what the bots were going to do for those plays. But this is what the board looks like currently. The French are at war. They've played the Treaty of Alliance. So they are now able to place pieces on the map. They have blockaded New York City. And Rochambeau and Washington have marched on Boston with quite a force of Continentals and regulars there. Okay. The Indians have 6 villages on the map. Right now, the Patriots are winning the forts versus villages race. The cumulative British casualties is 1 greater than cumulative rebellion casualties. So the the rebellion is winning that race. But support is way, way higher than opposition. So Royalists are winning that race. Okay. You might be able to hear some construction noise during this video. They're doing some construction right outside my window, so I apologize for that. Hopefully it won't be too much of a bother. Okay. So we move on to the next card, and we can expect probably some more brilliant strokes very soon. The next card is British Attack Danbury, and the British are first eligible. All of the factions are eligible right now because a brilliant stroke card was just played. Okay, well, looking at the Patriot bots flowchart, brilliant stroke. Use after Treaty of Alliance when Washington is in a space with 4 or more Continentals and a player faction is first eligible. Okay, so in the last video, I mentioned how I interpret the phrase a player faction is first eligible while playing Nullitaire. The thing is, the way these bots are designed is to go up against, human players. So the bots generally won't play a brilliant stroke card unless a human player is first eligible. Well, we don't have any human players. So if we interpret it like that, these bots will never play their brilliant stroke cards. Okay, so instead I tend to think of these bots as players. They're the only players in the game, so they're player factions. Okay, and so the way I interpret a player faction as first eligible is to mean a faction besides the Patriots is first eligible. I think that's the best way to interpret that while playing Nullitaire. Okay, so the British are first eligible right now, and so that second condition is satisfied. A player faction, that is to say, some faction besides the Patriots is first eligible. Okay, and Washington is in a space with 4 or more Continentals. He's there with 8 Continentals in Boston. Okay, so the Patriots would like to play their brilliant stroke. But wait. Yes, the British are first eligible, so they wouldn't normally want to play their brilliant stroke card, but once the Patriots say they want to play it, well, then they want to get on the action. Okay, so this is the British bots brilliant stroke instructions. Use after Treaty of Alliance. If British leader with 4 or more British regulars and rebel players first eligible, or Patriots play their brilliant stroke. All right. So King George wants to trump the Patriot brilliant stroke, and so the British will play their brilliant stroke card now. As I mentioned in the last video, the rule book gives us guidance on how to execute a brilliant stroke event for the bots. And it says, we follow the executing faction's flow chart to select the first limited command. that both matches the flowchart priorities and can involve that faction's leader. If no such limited command is possible, the brilliant stroke play is aborted. Okay, so we remember that for a brilliant stroke card, the executing faction gets 2 free limited commands and 1 special activity, and the leader must be involved in at least one of those limited commands. So basically what we're doing is we're going to look for a command that the leader can be involved with first, since that's one of the requirements of the brilliant stroke card. Okay, and so we just use the faction flowchart to find such a command. Okay, so British resources greater than 0, yes, they are at 8. 10 or more British regulars on the map, yes. And rebels control a city without a rebel fort. Yes. Okay, so British bot would like to garrison. But the thing is, we have to make sure that Howe will be a part of this garrison before we can execute it as the first limited command for the British bot. And also we need to keep in mind that the very first part of garrison there says first execute a special activity. Okay, so I think what we need to do is we need to go through garrison here and figure out if Howe would be involved in this garrison. And if he would be, then we go and do the special activity first, since that's what we're told to do by this flowchart. Then we come back and do the garrison activity. The garrison command. Okay, so first things first, we need to figure out whether or not Howe would be involved in this garrison. So the garrison command for the British bot says, in origin spaces with British control, leave 2 more royalist than rebel pieces, and remove last regular only if population 0 or active support. All right, so what I did, as usual, is I marked every piece on the board that can move according to these restrictions. And it turns out to be a total of 20 British regulars that can move. Okay, including 9 of those regulars in Norfolk that are there with Howe. Okay, so looking at the next bullet point here in garrison. Okay, so within that move, first, just enough to add British control. First, where most rebels without a Patriot fort, then New York City, then random. Okay, well, obviously then they want to move in just enough regulars to take back control of Boston. All right, well, since the rebels have 16 pieces there and the British have 2, that means that British bot would have to move in 15 regulars in order to take back control of Boston. Okay, well, that means that the only way they can do it is if this group in Norfolk moves. So, therefore, Howe would be a part of this garrison command. Okay, well, now that that's settled, the thing to do is actually go and execute a special activity first. Okay. The special activity that the British would like to use is naval pressure. But we have to remember, before we get to that, that Howe is the leader of the British. And his special capability is, before executing a British special activity, first lower FNI 1 level. So actually, before the British even use French naval intervention, before they use naval pressure, they get to lower FNI back to 0 and remove that French blockade from New York back to the West Indies. And that also means that the support in New York now is counted once again in the total support. So now total support is back up to 34. The British now use naval pressure, but because FNI is now 0, they simply add 1d3 resources, and they rolled a 2. So they gain 2 resources. So now British bot is going to start moving pieces for the Garrison Command. All right, so They're going to move just enough to add British control. First were the most rebels without Patriot Fort, then New York City, then random. Okay. So they're going to move 15 regulars into Boston first. Well, as I said, they have 20 regulars that they could move. And we're given no priorities on this. It doesn't say, starting with the largest groups first or anything like that. It just says, just move enough to take control. Okay. Well, like I said, we know that this group that Howe's with is going to have to be involved in this eventually. But there's nothing that says those pieces have to move first. So I think what's going to happen here is British bot is going to choose randomly from the spaces with regulars that can move and move those pieces first. And when those pieces are moved, if there's not quite 15 yet in the space, then they'll choose another space randomly, etc. And keep going like that until there are 15 regulars in Boston. So a curious thing happened while British bot was executing that Garrison Command. Norfolk turned out to be selected last when they were selecting spaces randomly to move their British regulars. And when Norfolk came up last, they only needed to move, I think, 5 more regulars into the space in order to take control of Boston. As a matter of fact, I need to change that, don't I? Okay. And that meant Howe didn't go with, because he stays with the larger group, which stayed behind. So he didn't actually go to Boston during this garrison activity. So then the question was, well, was he really involved then in this, as required by the Brilliant Stroke card? Well, going to the rules, we see here the instructions about Brilliant Stroke cards and the leaders. So it says the leader must be in a space involved in at least one of the limited commands, including an origination space for a March Scout Raid or Garrison Limited Command. Okay. So as long as he was in an origination space, that is a space where pieces moved from during this limited command, that counts. He was involved in this, even though he didn't go along with. Okay. So the British have now taken back control of Boston. Let's continue on with the rest of the Garrison Limited Command. Because this is a limited command, Garrison says that all moving British regulars must end in a single destination city. Okay, so the British cannot choose any more cities to garrison. They've done their limited command here with Boston. Okay, however, there's still more garrison that British bot can do in Boston. Okay, so they can't move any more regulars into other cities, though. Okay, so it says, the third bullet point, then to give each British-controlled city first 1 regular, if without active support, then 3 more British cubes, first 1 underground militia. Okay, they can't do that because they can't select any more spaces. If no cubes have moved yet, instead muster, well, they have moved. Okay, last bullet point. If any cubes did move, activate underground militia, then displace most rebels. First to a province with most opposition, then least support within that to lowest population. All right, so the Garrison Command says, if desired in one city, with British control, no Patriot Fort, and not blockaded, displace all rebellion units to an adjacent space. Okay, well, this is a city. Boston is a city with British control and no fort, no Patriot Fort, and it's not blockaded. So the British can displace all of those rebellion pieces, and they're going to do so to the space with the most opposition. That means they're going to push Rochambeau and Washington back into Massachusetts. So Rochambeau and Washington are pushed back into Massachusetts. Okay, so that was the first limited command, and British bot has also used the free special activity, but they still have one more free limited command. So we use the flowchart once again to choose that, and this time Howe does not have to be a part of it. Okay, so British resources greater than 0, yes. Again, they're at 10. 10 or more British regulars on the map, and rebels control a city without a rebel fort. Well, not anymore. The British took care of that. Okay, available British regulars greater than a D6. Well, there are 2 available British regulars, so as long as they don't roll a 1, and they didn't, they rolled a 4. The answer is no. 2 or more active rebels in a space outnumbered by British regulars and leader. No, there's no space like that. So, British bot would like to march for their limited command. Okay, so as usual, I will mark all the pieces on the board that can move according to these priorities. It says lose no British control, leave last Tory and war party in each space, and last regular if British control but no active support. All right, so I'll mark all the pieces that can move according to that, and then we'll see where the British bot wants to march. I've marked all the pieces that can move, given the priorities of the march command. So let's see where they go. Okay, this time we are told how to prioritize these groups. It says moving the largest groups first. Add British control to up to 2 cities, then colonies. Within each, first where rebel cubes, then highest population. Use common cause to increase group size. Okay, they're not going to use common cause. Well, that says that they want to take control of a city. There are 2 cities that they currently do not have control of, Quebec City and New York City. And we're also told to move the largest group first. Well, the largest group is clearly that huge group in Boston. And so they'd like to move that to a city. First where there are rebel cubes, where there are no rebel cubes in a city. Not anymore. They were just ousted from Boston. So then they choose highest population. Well, that would clearly then be New York City. Okay, so British bot is going to move that huge group in Boston now to New York City. Not sure that's exactly tactical. You know, aren't they just abandoning Boston once again to suffer the same fate? I mean, it's likely that Rochambeau and Washington are just going to do the same thing again, march back into Boston. But anyway, that's what British bot does with their last limited command of their brilliant stroke. So the British take control once again of New York City. And that concludes their brilliant stroke. All of the factions go to eligible, and we move on to the next card. The next card is War Damages Colonies Economy. And the Indians are up first. But of course, the Patriots have yet to play their brilliant stroke. It's the last one left, and they're going to want to do that now. So their instructions say, when Washington is in a space with 4 or more continentals, and he is, and a player faction is first eligible. Okay. So the Patriots now play their brilliant stroke. As before, we first have to find a limited command that involves Washington. So looking at the Patriot flow chart, Patriot resources greater than 0, yes, they are way up at 18 resources. Rebel cubes and leader greater than active royalist pieces in a space with both. No, there aren't any spaces with rebel cubes and active royalist pieces. So no. Raleigh would place a fort. No, Patriots are not in any spaces where there's room for a fort. Or a D6 is greater than the underground militia on the map. Well, there are 10 underground militia on the map. So the roll is irrelevant. The answer is no. Rabble rousing can shift 1 or more spaces toward active opposition. No. Rabble rousing requires Patriot control, which they have in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, but those spaces are already at active opposition. Or in underground militia, and the only spaces with underground militia not already at rebellion control are Indian Reserve provinces, which you can't shift toward opposition anyway, because those are always neutral. Okay, so the answer to that is also no. Therefore, Patriot bot would like to march. Okay, I wonder if they're going to march back into Boston. All right, well, okay, lose no rebel control. Leave 1 active Patriot unit with each Patriot fort, and 1 Patriot unit, if possible, underground militia where no active opposition. All right, I will mark every piece that can move according to those restrictions, and we'll see where PatriotBot wants to march. So I've now marked every piece that can move with this march command. And let's see where they're going to march. It says moving the largest groups first, add rebel control to 2 spaces. First where villages, then cities, then elsewhere. Within that, where largest population, include most French regulars possible. Okay, well, it seems like the French wanted to march on the British, but the Patriots would rather march on the Indians. So it's pretty clear that Washington is going to march into New York here. Now, it's an interesting question I had about these militia that are in Quebec and the one militia up there in New Hampshire, because those are not active. And PatriotBot says, leave 1 active Patriot unit with each Patriot fort. Well, since those aren't active, it seems that those are eligible to march. And they are adjacent to New York. So it seems like they probably will want to march into New York also, along with all these Continentals. 2 of the Patriot Continentals will stay behind in Massachusetts because those are active. So the Patriots have to leave 2 active units for those 2 forts. So they'll leave 2 Continentals behind. They'll take 7 Continentals along with 7 of the French regulars, because they can go 1 for 1. That means Rochambeau will go along as well. And all of their militia in Massachusetts as well. So I was thinking about this. I was like, will they move those other militia, abandoning those forts? Well, they're not active, so we're not told to leave them there. And looking at the guidelines here, this box that even says guidelines on it, isn't that nice? These are guidelines for operating the bots. It says, unless otherwise specified, carry out whatever actions apply to the maximum extent, such as in the most spaces or with the most pieces allowed, and only as long as needed pieces and resources are available. Well, it seems like to the maximum extent possible means that those other militia will also move into New York. So I believe that that's what PatriotBot will do. Most of these Continentals, except the 2 that are going to stay behind, along with an equal number of the French regulars, along with Washington and Rochambeau, and the 6 militia in Massachusetts, and the 1 militia in New Hampshire, and the 2 militia up in Quebec will all move into New York. Well, except, wait a minute. Now, if they move those 2 militia from Quebec, they'll lose control. Well, they don't have control. That's not true. No, it says lose no rebel control. Okay, so they can move those 2. All right, so all those pieces will move into New York. The 2 war parties in New York also get activated because the March Command says activate 1 war party for every 2 Continentals there. So those 2 were activated. Okay, so that's the first limited command from the Patriots. Now we look for their special activity. So following from the March Command, we see that PatriotBot would like to use partisans as a special activity. So it says, if Patriot resources equal 0, instead execute persuasion. Patriot resources are 18, so they're okay there. Otherwise, partisans in a space with underground militia and enemy. First to remove a village, then to remove most war parties, then British. Within each first to add most rebel control, then to remove most British control, then elsewhere. All right, well, partisan says we need a space with underground militia and royalist pieces and no battle in the space. Okay. Well, there are 2 such spaces. There's that 1 militia, underground militia, over there in the southwest. And, of course, all the underground militia that were just moved into New York. Well, since we're told we want to remove the most, well, first to remove a village, but that's not possible. Remove the most war parties. All right, well, if they want to remove the most war parties, then they really need to use the second option here. Activate 2 underground militia, remove 1 of the 2, and remove 2 royalist units. All right. Well, then they're going to have to do that in New York. they'll activate 2 of their underground militia, remove both of those war parties, and remove 1 of their activated militia. Those villages are now defenseless in New York. And the Patriots have another limited command, so probably they're going to want to battle there. All right, so we just go down the flowchart once again. This time, Washington does not have to be a part of this limited command. Patriot resources greater than 0, yes. They're at 18. Rebel cubes plus leader greater than active royalist pieces in a space with both. Yeah, so that's New York. So the rebel cubes and leader are greater than the active royalist pieces. Those 2 villages are active royalist pieces. So Patriot bot is going to want to battle. The battle priorities for the Patriots say select all spaces where the rebel force level, if possible including French, plus modifiers exceeds the British force level plus modifiers. First with Washington, then in highest population, then where most villages, then elsewhere. In a previous video, I mentioned that where it says British force level, that should actually say Royalist force level. That's a mistake. Okay, well, this is a limited command, so they're only going to be able to do this in 1 space. But there's only 1 space where they would select battle anyway, and that's New York, of course. Clearly, their force level plus modifiers exceeds the Royalist force level plus modifiers. Okay, so they're going to resolve battle in New York. So let's figure out the force level for each side here. The rebellion is attacking, and the French are going to be included in this. So we count up all the cubes, both the Continentals and the French regulars, up to the number of Continentals, but they're equal, 7 and 7. So that's 14. And add half of the activated militia rounding down. Well, there's only 1 active militia there. And like I said in a previous video, the Patriot bot never activates militia to add to their force level. So their force level is 14. The defenders, the Indians in this case, have a force level of 0 because they only have 2 villages there and those don't count for force level. All right, well, that means that Patriot bot gets to roll 14 divided by 3, rounding down to a maximum of 3. Well, that's 3. They get to roll their full 3 dice. And since the Indians have a force level less than 2, they don't get to roll any dice at all. All right, well, I already rolled for them, and Patriot bot, again, that's kind of overkill. They rolled an 8. So it's 8 to 0 before the modifiers are applied. All right, well, let's just go down the line here and see what the modifiers are. At least half attacking cubes are regulars. Yes, that's true. Half of the attacking cubes in this case are French regulars. So that adds 1. So that's 9 now. At least 1 attacking side piece is underground. Yes. So that's another +1. So they're now at 10. At least 1 attacking leader. Yes. In fact, there are 2 in this case. So that's now 11. Attacking, including French with Lausanne. No. It's Rochambeau. British attacking in a blockaded city? No. British attacking in West Indies and at least 1 squadron is present? No. Per defending fort? There are no forts. Indians defending in an Indian reserve? Well, the Indians are defending, but they're in New York, not in the reserves. Patriots and French defending with Washington? No. Okay. So the loss level for the Indians here is 11. Will they at least manage to force some losses on the Patriots? Let's see. Well, they have 0. At least half defending cubes are regulars? No. At least 1 defending side piece is underground? No. At least 1 defending leader? No. British defending in a blockaded city? No. British defending in West Indies and at least 1 squadron is present? No. Per defending fort? There are no forts here. So the Indians have 0. So it's 11 to 0. All right. Well, that's more than enough to remove those 2 Indian villages, and the rebellion is unscathed in that battle. All right. Well, we consider win the day But you can only win the day if the loser removes a cube or a fort and 2 or more pieces. So even though the Indians are removing 2 or more pieces here, those villages are not a cube or a fort. I guess I guess there's no I guess there's not much honor, maybe, in attacking defenseless villages. All right. In any case, the 2 villages are removed for this battle, and that's the last limited command of the Patriots' Brilliant Stroke. The next card is Culper's Spyring. The Patriots are first eligible. All the factions are eligible right now because a Brilliant Stroke card was just played. Okay, and we see the musket icon there under the Patriots. So that means we're going to have to look at their special instructions for this event. This event says, spies reduce British effectiveness. Remove 3 British cubes to casualties. All right, well, looking at the special instructions for this card for the Patriots, Culper's Spyring. If French is a player, choose command and special activity instead. Well, again, the way we're interpreting that while playing Nullitaire is that the French, well, all the bots are players. There are no humans around here to be players. So the French are a player in this case. So it says choose command and special activity instead. That was kind of a curiosity to me because looking at their event or command box, they wouldn't choose this event anyway. The only thing that could come into play here is that last bullet point. Event is effective. Patriots have 25 or more pieces on the map and a d6 rolls 5 or better. You know, they might take this event in that case. But right now, that isn't the case. They don't have 25 or more pieces on the map. So either way you look at it, the Patriots are not going to take this event. So moving down the flow chart, Patriot resources greater than 0. Yes, they are way up at 18. Rebel cubes and lead are greater than active royalist pieces in a space with both. No, there's no space with rebel cubes that also has royalist pieces. So the answer to that is no. Raleigh would place a fort. At first I thought the answer to that was yes, looking at New York. And there is a fort available. But we have to be careful here because Raleigh says location, any spaces without active support. So they actually cannot choose New York to rally because that space is at active support. Okay, so there's no space where Raleigh could place a fort right now. Or 1d6 is greater than the underground militia on the map. Well, there are 8 underground militia on the map right now. So no matter what we roll there, the answer is no. Rabble rousing can shift 1 or more spaces toward active opposition. Well, yeah. New York. They'd like to neutralize that support there. So that perhaps in the future they could place a fort. And of course they need to start working on whittling down that support. Okay, so Patriot Bot is going to choose rabble rousing. All right, if Patriot resources reach 0, immediately use persuasion before continuing the rabble rousing command. No chance of that happening. Like I said, they have 18 resources. In each space where rabble rousing can shift toward active opposition, first in active support within that and highest population. Okay, well, looking at the rabble rousing command here, any spaces with rebellion, control, and Patriot pieces, or one or more underground militia. Well, New York is a clear selection here. They have Patriot control. All right, any other spaces they might choose? Well, the only other underground militia would be in the southwest, but they don't want to rabble rouse there because that's an Indian Reserve province. Okay, so the only space they're going to select here is New York, and they're going to place a propaganda marker and shift that 1 step toward active opposition, which means it'll go to passive support. That cost them 1 resource, so they're down to 17. Okay, now they'd like to use a special activity. So following their flowchart here, we end up at partisans. If Patriot resources equal 0, instead persuasion, well, they're not at 0, so they can do this. Otherwise, partisans in a space with underground militia and enemy. First to remove a village, then to remove most war parties, then British. Within each, first to add most rebel control, then to remove most British control, then elsewhere. All right, so partisans says any space with underground militia and royalist pieces, and no battle. Well, the only space right now where partisans is a possibility is the southwest again. There's 1 underground militia there, and some royalist pieces. So that's where Patriot Bot would like to use partisans. So they will activate that underground militia and remove 1 of those war parties. The next available faction can either take the event or a limited command. And the British are next on the card. So the event on their side says, Hercules Mulligan arrested. Activate 3 Patriot militia anywhere. Well, the British are not interested in that. Their last bullet point did come into effect. British control 5 or more cities. They control all of them. The event is effective, yes. And a d6 rolls a 5 or better. Well, they rolled on that and rolled a 1. So the answer to that is no. Okay, British resources greater than 0. Yes, they are at 10. 10 or more British regulars on the map, yes. And rebels control a city without a rebel fort, no. Available British regulars greater than 1d6. Well, there are 2 available British regulars. So they had to roll on that. And the only roll where they would answer yes is a roll of a 1. They roll again, and it was again a 1. So the answer is yes. They're going to muster. Well, actually, no. That's not right. So I said at the end of the last video, the very end, that there was a mistake made during the course of play in that video. And that mistake does make a difference to future gameplay. And here's where it made the difference. So basically, I had filmed 2.5 more videos of gameplay, and I realized that there was a mistake in part 6 that made a difference to here in part 7. And so what I'm doing is I'm going back and resetting everything to this point, and we're going to I'm going to replay everything and reshoot everything from this point onward, because the mistake was that big a deal. So here's what happened. When the French bot used its Brilliant Stroke card, they used Skirmish for their special activity. And when I did the skirmish, I even read out the procedure, the end of which says, cubes and forts are removed to casualties. They did their skirmish in the West Indies, which removed 2 British regulars there and 1 French regular from there. But where did I put them? Well, I certainly didn't put them over here. Instead, I put the British regulars in their available box, and I put that French regular in its available forces box. But what should have happened is that these pieces should have gone to casualties. Okay. Now, when I saw that mistake, I thought, well, that probably won't make a difference, in the gameplay, because it's unlikely that the British are going to do anything with those 2 French regulars up there. But rolling that 1, caused them to select muster here because they thought they had 2 British regulars available, but they didn't, or they shouldn't have had 2 British regulars available. So they should not have selected muster here. Instead, they should have carried on with their flowchart. So I'm going to correct this mistake, which, by the way, means we need to move these up as well to correct that. Okay. And I've reset the board, of course, to the state it was at this point in the game. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on from here. We'll just continue on the flow chart as it should have been done at this point. And we'll finish the British turn for this video. I'll end the video after this British turn. And then I will make subsequent videos carrying on from here. Okay, so let's carry on. So let's see. Available British regulars greater than a D6? No, definitely not. Okay, so we should have answered no to that question. 2 or more active rebels in a space outnumbered by British regulars and leader. No, there are no spaces with British regulars and any rebel pieces. So that means that for this limited command, the British should march. All right, so lose no British control, leave last Tory and war party in each space, and last regular if British control but no active support. As usual, I will mark all the pieces that can move according to those restrictions, and then we'll see where they want to go. So I have marked all of the pieces that can move according to these restrictions. And now we'll see where they actually want to go. Again, this is a limited command, so there's only one destination space that they can select for this. March, by the way, says move any British regulars onto an adjacent space, or if moving units are in or adjacent to a city, not blockaded, to another city not blockaded, or a province adjacent to it. Tories may only accompany through the entire process, British regulars 1 for 1. Activate 1 militia for every 3 British cubes there. Okay, so there are no blockaded cities right now, and every colony is adjacent to some city or other. So this means that the British can march to any city or colony right now. All right, so where do they want to go? Well, moving the largest groups first, add British control to up to 2 cities, then colonies within each first 4 rebel cubes, then highest population, use common cause to increase group size if destination is adjacent province. Okay, so they want to add British control up to 2 cities. That's what they want to prioritize. All right. Well, there's only one city that is not at British control, and that's Quebec City. And we're told to move the largest groups first. Well, the largest group is clearly this big group in New York City. They have to leave behind 1 regular there so they don't lose control. So they are going to move this large group from New York City first up into Quebec City. That costs the British 1 resource, and since this is a limited command, they can't choose any more spaces. However, it might be possible to do more in Quebec City, so we have to check and make sure, and there's nothing else for the British to do there. All right, well, they've taken control of a city, so the second bullet point is now satisfied. They can't do up to 2 because it's limited. Okay, third bullet point, then march to population 1+ spaces, not at active support. First to add Tories, where regulars are the only British units. Then to add regulars where Tories are the only British units within each first in the above destinations. Well, Quebec City is already at active support, so they wouldn't. So this priority wouldn't come into play. And in any case, there aren't any Tories that can actually move. The only Tories that are with movable groups of regulars are in Norfolk, Charlestown, and North Carolina, but we're told not to remove the last Tory from a space, so those have to stay there. All right, so on to the next one. Then march in place to activate underground militia first in support. Well, obviously they're not going to do that. All right, well, that is the end of their limited command then. There's nothing more for the British to do. As I said, I'm going to end this video here, now that I've made this important correction. And I will carry on in future videos from this point. Unfortunate that we had to lose all those turns, but I'm happy to have corrected the mistake. Okay, well, I'll see you next time. If you like this video, please like it, comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.